Okay, this is Brent Rains for Alternate Perceptions Online Magazine. And once again, I have a special guest. I'm going to be interview. Happens to be on a Wednesday, the 17th, yes, of May. And also this, I mean, of April. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. And this will be in the, as well as me posting it on Facebook afterwards. This interview will also be available in the May issue of Alternate Perceptions. And my special guest this evening is Robert D. Miles, who happens to be a seasoned industry professional with over 40 years of successful collaborations, renowned for award-winning documentaries like Fast Walkers and Alien Agenda Planet Earth. He's the force behind the acclaimed UFO film Fast Walkers, recipient of the People's Choice and Best Music EBE Awards, which EBE, folks, is Extraterrestrial Biological Entity. His works, including 13 documentaries in the UFO Chronicles series, are available on Amazon and various global platforms sold to major outlets like Reality Entertainment, Netflix, Amazon, Apple Premium Plus, Vanguard, Vanguard. Okay, sorry, and Columbia Pictures. And so we're going to be diving into all of this and so much more that you really don't know, people, but you're going to find out here how this all came about. It's quite a story. So, welcome, Robert. Good to finally, get back together with you. We met at a little open inquiry group down in Huntsville, Alabama, back in March, and I discovered a little while ago that I actually had received an email when I was, clicking to check all the emails recently sent, one back in 2007 that told about an experience that you had that actually represents the reason why you got involved in the UFO field, as I understand it. So, anyway, I guess prior to this, you really had no interest, right, in ufology, the subject.
That's correct. Yes. At the time that occurred, it was quite a bit later in my life because I grew up in Portland, Oregon, where I went to high school and worked in a shipyard building ships and also railroad cars. On and off through college. Now, I didn't get a degree there at Portland State, but I later got a degree at Coleman College in La Mesa, California, an associate's degree in Management Information Sciences, and went ahead to work with the largest IBM sites in the world, IBM sites like Lockheed, Rockwell, all of the big boys, all the way from Santa Barbara, California, down to the border of Mexico. And that occurred because the government had told the banks and all the principal users of IBM equipment. And at that time, as you probably know, Brent, IBM has never sold a computer. They only lease them. And so they had the problem of what happens if there's an earthquake, because at that time in California, the predictions for a dire earthquake were so incredible that, and there were a lot of aftershocks there on the Sandrianas Fault, and so many of the major institutions, as well as the high-tech companies, were located in an area that would literally be turned to mush and sand. And so the government issued this mandate where they had to have what we call contingency backup. And the reason I mention that is because currently today, we're hearing talks about solar flares and how solar flares can bring down our world as we know us and take us back to the Stone Age. And when we get into my UFO aspect of this interview, I will be able to tell you my vision of the future and the special mission I took on after being invited aboard a spacecraft by an alien person. And I call them a person. Actually, I refer to them as friends. Many people say they were probably Palladians because they were blonde, but they had amazing technology. And they told me that Earth had been contacted and been interacting with our planet and planets all over, not just the galaxy, but the cosmos, interdimensionally, for literally, well, actually, since before time began. Because as humans, we tend to count time linearly. In other words, in a straight line,
Hmm.
beginning, end. But they don't look at it that way. They look at like it is a circular thing. And it's like, if you remember, some people will, that's old enough to remember the old time carousel projectors, where you had this cartridge on the top that held your slides. And as the cartridge progressed, every time you clicked the button, you'd see a
Hmm.
different picture, right? You remember that?
Right. Oh,
Well,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, well, you remember you could push a button and you could rotate that carousel?
Right. Then you could take it out and put another carousel in there and
Yeah,
look at other pictures.
yeah, but so they view the cosmos and time and interdimensionality like that carousel projector. Anywhere they want to be, they can rotate through what I call them token rings, and we'll get into that. But most people would call them, you know, black holes or portals. And those things are so big that they can literally bring a planet through them and place it wherever they want. And there's also been a lot of questions about what the heck is our moon and how did it get here? So I'm not saying that that's how it came in, but it certainly makes the most sense to me of all the explanations I've heard from the scientific community.
Yeah, when you said
But
that, it made me think of the moon. Yeah. So
yeah,
really, if I'm not jumping the gun too much at this point, from our previous conversation, you were at the time you had spent a lot of time going around the Hawaiian Islands. You'd been to every one of them, and then you were getting tired of, I think, this part of your life. You wanted something more, and so you were about to sell this boat you had, a trimaran built in Portland,
tri,
Oregon.
tri, trimaran, meaning three hulls. Yeah, it was a new kind of boat, a very innovative one. So let me get in a little bit to the backstory. Let me set the stage for what
Sure,
happened.
sure.
Yeah, after I ended up going there to college for a while, I actually got a job selling life insurance. And my job was basically to scare people to death. And so I learned how to do that pretty well. And so within a short time, within 6 months or a year, I was getting what was called residual commissions. So I had this constant income coming in, and my lifestyle changed. I mean, I started out in a little old mobile home and ended up getting to the point where I was able to have a Corvette. I was able to have a beautiful runabout and was able to water ski on the Columbia River and, just basically party and have a good time. And I was still a very young man. And it was at a point for me where I ran into a group of people down by the river there, the Columbia River, and they started talking to me about how that river out there, that Columbia, is a pathway to the world. And I was getting kind of bored. I'd been doing this other kind of lifestyle, and even with the Corvettes, and actually I owned quite a few of them. Even with those, I had reached a point where I was bored with it. And the more I met these people, the more I became convinced that, wow, that really sounds exciting. And I'm ready for a change in my life. And especially because my residuals would be coming in for quite a few years. So what I did is I looked around that boatyard, and there was a boat sitting there that was a replica of Joshua Slocum's Tanya, which was a ship that this fireman had been building for almost 25 years. But he died, and the boat just sat there. And so I could look at it, not knowing anything about boats now, Brent. I looked at that and I thought, well, heck, I can fix that up. So I got another guy as a partner, and he and I jumped in and we bought the boat for a little of nothing and ended up being so excited until we went down there and we started to check it out after we paid for it. And someone started telling me
After you
that was
paid for it.
there in the boatyard that you better
Uh-huh.
check that boat for dry rot. And so I
Oh,
said, well, what is dry rot? And they said, well, you'll find out if it's got it. So he crawled under the boat with me and we took a screwdriver. And on the bottom of the boat, which was these huge cedar planks, um, he said, stick that screwdriver right through that plank. And I said, oh, that won't work. And I tried it and it did. It went right through the plank. And
oh.
so what happened then is a long saga of me using my skills as a welder to replace all the way up past the water line. The hull was steel. And the good news is that it worked. And later, C Magazine did a feature story on that. And when you print your magazine, you'll probably have a picture of that online.
Mm-hmm.
But that boat was a real experience. We sailed up and down the Columbia River. We learned what navigation lights were and all those kind of things. And boy, I was getting pretty excited, but it was so slow. It was only due like
We're having a
six
bit of
months.
a yeah. We're having a little bit of a glitch there. It kind of.
Yeah.
You said you were getting excited. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was learning so much, Brent, and so what I was learning was all about seafaring things like rules
Mm-hmm.
of the road and what a buoy is and which side of the river you should be on. But it was so slow; it was only capable of speeds of about 6 knots, which is slightly over 7 miles an hour.
Sure.
So I thought to myself, sailing around the world in this thing is going to take me forever. Well, long story short, I ended up hearing about this new type of boat. It was called a trimaran, meaning it has three hulls, and they were capable of very high speeds. And so I went to Seattle. I went aboard one, and I was amazed at the space. I was amazed at how comfortable it was. And so I bought the plans and went back to Portland, and I sold to Tanya for enough money to go ahead and begin to build this trimaran in my backyard. And building three hulls took quite a while, but I accomplished it. And then I moved it down to the bank of the Columbia River. And there I was luckily able to get a great partner by the name of Mike Sones. And he and I finished the boat off. And then we took it out on some trips. And ultimately, we didn't have enough money to sail around the world, and we certainly didn't have enough money to go very far because by this time I had exhausted my my monies, and Mike wasn't rich either. So what we did is we put an ad in the newspaper there in Portland and ran a radio commercial. And the next thing we knew, we had about 50 people wanting to sail to Hawaii with us and share expenses. So we did some intensive interviewing and ended up with 11 people, including ourselves, on that boat. And everybody had a place to sleep. It was pretty big. It was 24 feet wide and 47 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sailed down, started sailing down the Oregon coast. The weather was fabulous. And the boat was sailing with the wind behind it. So we were moving quickly. We were doing about 19 knots, which was like 21 miles an hour. So 3 or 4 times what the Tanya could do. And we were just stoked and catching fish and having a great time. And then suddenly, over the radio, we heard this storm warning come across that a gale was going to be forming right where we were. And we didn't know what to do. We had read some books, but there weren't many on trimarans. So we knew that if you're in a storm like that, the last thing you should do is try to head into it. But what you want to do is you want to quarter to it and you want to head out and get as far away from shore as you possibly can. So we did that, and the winds were so fierce and the waves so high that we ended up 300 miles offshore and missed San Francisco, which was our first stop, and ended up in Monterey. And then from Monterey, we all kissed the ground when we got off. And then we went ahead and went on down to San Diego. And from there, we sailed on to Hawaii, a distance of 2,450 miles. And we were so new to this, we didn't even know how to navigate. But we knew that there was a little technique called noon sight navigation, very simplistic, where we got a plastic section and took noon sights right when the noon is at its zenith, and then you have this book and it says where you are when you have those numbers. And so we did that, and we landed in Hilo, Hawaii. And I tell you, it was the most beautiful place I had ever been, and I swore I would never leave there.
Wow.
So, of course, times change, You visit all the islands, you eat all the free bananas you want, you have all the parties you want, you do all the surfing you want, you meet all the pretty girls you want. And so pretty soon after we had visited all the islands and ended up in Alawai Yacht Harbor in downtown Honolulu, the most beautiful place in the world for me, I decided that I still had this desire which had come upon me to discover who I was and what in the world I was doing on this planet anyway. And so, after many discussions with my partner who wanted to continue, he finally agreed to sell the boat. And we put an ad in the paper, and within 1 week, we had a Navy commander come up and pay cash for the boat. And so on the morning we were going to deliver the boat, I was in my bunk, and on this trimaran, I had a double bed with a skylight right over my head. And every morning, my ritual was to get up about 4:30 in the morning, go over, put my clothes on, go over and put the coffee pot on, and
Right.
perk the coffee. As soon as I had myself a steaming cup of coffee, I didn't wait for it to finish completely. I love coffee. I still do. But I poured myself a cup of coffee and went back to my bunk. And I'm sitting on my bunk, and my head is just below the beautiful skylight hatch that I had. So I got on my knees and I looked out, drinking my coffee, enjoying this incredible sight, and wondering what in the world am I going to do now? And I finished those kind of thoughts and, sat back down. I closed the hatch and I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I felt this tingling. And this tingling was not just a sensation, it was like a vibratory rate. And as it increased, the actual atmosphere in the room seemed to sparkle. And then suddenly, when it reached a crescendo that was, I could only describe it as orgasmic, but not sexual. It was like a orgasm of the brain. A beautiful woman materialized right beside my bed in my stateroom. And I blinked my eyes and I thought to myself, and then I actually said out loud, "You can't be real." And she says, "I'm as real as you are, Robert. And would you like to meet my friends?" And so I thought a minute, and then I just instantly almost decided yes. And she said, "Okay, close your eyes and you'll be there. And I'll meet you there." And I said, "I can't do that." I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And she says, "Oh, don't worry, we'll help you." And so within an instant, I was in LaGuardia Airport in New York City. Now, this is where the story starts to get pretty wild, because all around me were people. Everything was completely normal. And then I heard her voice say, "Go up to a ticket window and asked for a ticket on the Jupiter flight. And I thought to myself, that is crazy. But everything looks so real. And of course I hesitated, but finally
So
I went down.
she wasn't there with you at the time though, right? You were just hearing she was talking to you in your head or at least the
Yeah,
audio?
right. Right. She wasn't standing next to me. She was, I could just hear her in my head.
Oh, okay.
So I walked down to the ticket window and I said to the ticket agent, "You're going to think this is crazy, but I'm supposed to ask you for a ticket on the Jupiter flight." And she said, "Okay, what's your name? Let me take a look." And she looked on a computer and she said, "Okay, I've got it right here." And she handed me a ticket. And then she said, "See that bank of elevators over there? Go over there to the third one on the right. It'll open and get in it, and it'll take you up to our concourse." And I, I said, "Okay." So I walked over there. I stood at the elevator, pushed the button, and it opened. I got in, and in the elevator was an old man and a younger boy. And within just like a minute and a half, I felt the upward motion. We were on the opening to the concourse, and I stepped out, and standing in front of us was this, again, blonde woman. And she had like this most incredible lycra blue uh, jumpsuit, spacesuit type thing, only it wasn't, no helmet or anything. This was like a first class uniform kind of thing that had a stripe, a series of stripes, like the rainbow running vertically from her top of her chest down. And she said, "Just right, just follow me." And aghast, I did. And I was led into kind of this circular area, and she had me sit in a seat, and she didn't say to buckle yourself in. It was very comfortable, more like a very fine lounge chair. And next to me, I was in the window side. There was a porthole. And next to me, there was like a console with a bunch of digital clocks, except they were more like digital that flipped. It wasn't numbers changing, it was like little flips and they would change. And so she said, over the PA, they said, "We'll be taking off in a minute. It won't take long." It sounds like you got a good partner there, Brent. Little pup.
Yeah, let me stand left for Pascal out. He's not sleeping now. Hold on. Sorry about that.
No
So
problem. You gave me a
I guess
chance
the,
to take a drink of my coffee, see?
there you go. I guess the boy and the older man there that was on the elevator, I guess they didn't step off. They or when the door opened and you were led off by the woman to that circular room.
Yeah, they got off at the same time and followed her and I into this circular area, but they didn't sit with me. This
Oh,
area was not real large. I mean, it was probably, oh, maybe 30 feet in diameter. And there were probably 10, 15 of those same types of lounge type seats. But anyway, so I'm sitting there And over the loudspeaker, I heard, "We'll be taking off in just a few minutes. You won't feel any kind of a sensation, but the trip will be very short. We'll probably be there in your Earth time calculations in 20 minutes." So
Hmm.
I sat there and still wondering what was happening to me. It's like, have you ever had a dreamlike reality where you think things don't make sense, but later you think about them and they do? Most people have. And so
Yeah,
I thought I was having a hallucination, you know.
yeah, that would be a lot to take in, and just describing it is a lot to take in. But
Yeah. So like most people, I
I know a lot
tried
of
to
people say, "Oh, tried to
yeah,
understand it." Yeah,
yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. I mean, I tried to logically understand what was happening. And of course, there was nothing in my memories that could logically equate what was going on. I had never been interested in science fiction or UFOs. My whole life was school, Corvettes, having fun, in boats, but never UFOs or this kind of an experience. So
yeah. But it
when
does seem connected though that you were looking for a different path in life, something more meaningful, and then right on the cusp of that, this woman visits you in the boat that's about to be sold. So anyway,
yeah, well, the boat was sold. The guy came after my experience was over, which I'll tell you in a few minutes.
okay, yeah,
He came and picked it up, and that part of my life was over. But as we get into this part of the story, Brent, uh, for so many years now, as you know, I'm not a young guy. Actually, I'm 81. And this event occurred in Hawaii in 1971. So many years have passed, and I've learned a lot and done a lot and experienced a lot, which is to help me understand it. But over the years, so many people said there's no way that could be happening. Nobody understood the idea of a multiverse,
Ken's,
interdimensionality. Star Trek, I think, even came on much later. I mean, but the
yeah,
way it was happening
yeah.
to me,
I'm just
go
going to warn
ahead.
you that I, I'm just going to say you were kind of breaking up there, but you talked about interdimensionality and Star Trek kind of I guess carried some of that theme, and you hadn't really followed science fiction prior or UFOs, but anyway, I just wanted
Yeah.
to get past that glitch.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just kind of repeat it in case you have to edit it. So I, for so long, even myself, could not understand the physics, the mathematical possibilities of how something like this could happen. However, later, I did hear about other people that had similar experiences. And because I had written a book called Safe Space, which was basically based on my experiences, I was invited on like shows like Art Bell, Jeff Rense, just a variety of some of the top talk shows that were airing on the radio back in those days. And of course, every time I did one, they'd bring on the attackers, and the attackers would shred me. And, but you know, by that time, I was so certain of what my future held that I mean, it would have been great if I'd had more people agree it was possible, but it wasn't necessary, because once I was aboard that vessel, we suddenly were moving, but I didn't perceive motion. And I looked out that porthole and I could see the earth, almost the whole earth, but not the whole earth. We were so close to it. And then within a matter of minutes, it shrank until it was just a little dot, a marble, and then even smaller, it winked out. And then we landed, and I exited on a conveyor-like device, and the whole sky around me was the most magnificent array of color and light and energy. And there at the bottom of the rampway was the woman that had appeared on my boat. And standing with her were 3 or 4 individuals. And she was still in her uniform, which was blue with the stripe and looked like Lycra. Now, some people would say that Lycra wasn't developed by that time, and it may not have been Lycra. I'm just saying it looked like Lycra. And so they greeted me, and the landscape was magnificent. It was beautifully green. The sky was crystal blue. There were small buildings off in the distance, but they were dome shaped. And so they took me to one of those buildings, and I was in a conference room after I entered, and there were probably, maybe 50 other people there. But let me say that by this time, I was completely comfortable. And all my apprehension was gone. I was experiencing the most incredible thing that had ever happened in my life. And many people say, well, you were abducted. And I say, no, I went willingly. And since this briefing that I received, I have never been the same for the rest of my life. And I like to refer to it as the safe space briefing. And what occurred is I was shown images of our Earth's past. I saw the wars, I saw the primitive people, I saw nuclear weapons going off, I saw armies, I saw famine, I saw flood, I saw earthquakes, I saw volcanoes, I saw the most cataclysmic destruction I could ever witness, beyond what I could imagine. And then I saw this beautiful and serene planet. And I saw that it was planet Earth. And then I was told that all of humanity has a choice. They have a choice to either be responsible and good, or evil and destructive. And then I was told, and people have asked me, now, what religion are these aliens or whatever you want to call them? And they didn't say or tell me what their religion was, but they did say God gave each of us a choice, and you're free to exercise that choice. And the destiny of humankind depends on the choices that all humanity makes on the planet. And the judgment, and they're not talking about it in a religious sense, I don't think, but perhaps it is, because much of this is written in the Bible if you're a Christian person. And ancient cultures talk of similar cataclysmic events that have occurred on our planet. So
Yeah.
they they tried to explain that in a way you're seeing the Akashic record. And for people that are familiar with that term, the Akashic record is not only the past, but the future of a particular planet or person or whatever, right? So
Yeah. And they
anyway,
didn't call it Akashic records, but that's sort of what you gathered from what they described then.
yeah. So anyway, what I want to do now is let you ask me some questions, and then I'll get into what I call my mission, because I left that briefing after accepting a mission to help change the condition on our planet Earth. And another thing I was told is that don't be surprised about what's going on your planet with spaceships and the visit of ETs or ultra terrestrials, because that's been going on for millions of years. And there's all kinds of ways to, if you want to approach it logically, do research on the ancient records of different cultures. But from my perspective and that experience, I didn't need to know all that, although I was exposed to it. All I needed to do was to
Okay.
try to
So,
accomplish.
so was it just that one visit to that planet that you had, or was this followed up by other encounters, or was that
No, no, I was also given a tour of the local planets in our system, and
okay?
everything we've been told is false. Um, Most of the information has been covered up and changed by some agency or some group that has infinite power on the media, and the programming that has gone on to the people of at least the United States, but basically because the United States has been the dominant player, um, has been that, we're all alone. There's no one else out there. None of the planets are livable, etc. And during the years that have followed, I was told to go back and use film as a means of telling the truth about what's been going on and what the future can
Oh,
hold for us if mankind can work together.
okay. I've got that, future of mankind. Um, there was a glitch there. I'm not sure. um, Unfortunately, you were told, and then uh, your image froze there for a while. There was no voice, and then we picked up what I just pointed out. So, unfortunately, this
You
happens
want
here
to
periodically.
you want to
Sure.
re-record that segment?
We could just kind of go back over that part, I guess, just to make sure we've
Okay. Where would you
didn't
like me
miss.
to start?
Um, oh, uh, it was just a ways back, about 15, about 20 seconds, I guess. What you were told, as I recall, and then the volume just stopped and the image froze. Um, but I think I got the.
Okay, you just popped out on me too.
I tell you what. Uh,
Yeah, we got
okay, well,
something's happening. Do you want to call me back? Does that help to start over? Not on the whole interview, but on the part that you need.
no, it'll be okay. It'll probably do the same thing again. We'll just continue on here.
Okay, why don't
Uh,
I pick it up from where I said I got a local tour or something? Do you want me to do that? Of the different planets?
yeah, I was wondering on the they took you to the tour of the planets of the solar system,
Yeah.
and as far as we know, there's nothing there except maybe on uh, maybe some of the moons of Jupiter or something. There may be oceans that contain
Oh
plenty of
no,
life
no, no,
forms.
no, no. All lots of the planet has life. There's life on lots of the planets in our system. And
How evolved?
there's vegetation and atmosphere, and NASA has covered it up. And the United States has strong armed so many of the countries to not disclose the truth of what's going on. And part of my mission and the reason I've done all of these films has been to interview, and I've traveled almost in many, many different countries and interviewed virtually well over 100 witnesses that have firsthand information, all the way from Brazil and Argentina and Europe. And in just the Fast Walker documentary, we had 23 of the top people in the world. And the Pope even sent over his number one cardinal, who was the head of demonology, to be interviewed. And he came right out, and in that film, Alien Agenda Planet Earth, he says right out that the Catholic Church has been in communication with the aliens, and they're more holy than the inhabitants of planet Earth because they don't have original sin. And so, in just that film, Alien Agenda Planet Earth, which is a remake of the earlier film Fast Walkers, you have the top people in the world on camera, not only telling their story, but revealing the truth about what's going on. And then I've gone on to make another, I think there's 14 or 15 films. Most of them are streaming. A lot of them are on YouTube. You can watch for free. Some of them are on Amazon. Some of them are on Apple TV Plus. But they're all over the place on the big straight things and the little ones. And I don't sell anything. I'm not selling books. I'm not selling videos, but I am selling information
Mhm.
about what's going on in the world. And some of my films, that one of them that's just coming out, it has pictures taken of bases on the moon that were put there. Well, actually, they were pre-German arrival, but the Germans arrived there in 1942. And as you probably know, Brent, there was an operation called Paperclip run by the government where von Braun and 1,600 Nazi scientists were brought out of the Nuremberg trials, where they would have been hung and given clemency and brought to the United States. And Braun was made the director of NASA, and he ran NASA for 50 years. And at the end, he actually said on camera, we couldn't have done it without the help of the others. Now, the United States, Braun helped the United States build bases on the moon by 1952. There's bases on the backside of the moon. I'm in touch with other people who are giving me information on the planet Mars, on what happened to Mars. I'm in touch with people that contact me from all over, people like yourself that have investigated this subject for years. And I admire you. And I admire the researchers that have spent so much time and energy, and in many cases, money. And it's just almost unbelievable how much of a strong arm the United States has had on these other countries, because Argentina and Peru and Mexico have released their documentation. The government has come out. And in that film, Alien Agenda, you'll see Jaime Maussan, who was a top television host in all of Mexico, the highest rated show. It was essentially 60 Minutes, only in Mexico, where he shows the government released footage of 15 UFOs being caught on camera by their infrared cameras. And he even includes the sound of the pilots. So many of the countries have broken with the stronghold of the United States. Now, Canada, on the other hand, has continued to keep their secrets. And there were massive, massive actions going on in Canada, as there is in Antarctica and in other places in the world.
Why do you think to um, put a lid on this? It seems like this would be something that they would want to share with the people, be open about.
Well, I think that the most obvious thing is, like Jim Marrs says, one of the greatest investigators of all time says, follow the money. And there is so much money being made keeping petroleum not only for plastic products, but for fuel, that if you had the anti-gravity, actually beyond anti-gravity, propulsion systems, which is called zero-point energy or free energy, everyone could have a little box to run their house. All of these companies would not need petrol, and that would be such a great drain on the economy. Also, all the petrochemical companies that are putting the pesticides and things uh, into agriculture and into our water, that it it would be a horrific drain on their pocketbooks. Now, other people say there's another aspect that's even more dire. And if you want me to, I'll go into that. And I hope it's not true, but as an investigator, I have to be open to the idea that it may be. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah, go ahead. It kind of got garbled, so let's give it a try and hear this because we got to know what you're talking about.
Okay, it's called depopulation. Have you ever seen or been exposed to the Georgia Guidestones?
Georgia Guidestones, yeah. Went there back in 2012. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I went there too. And wasn't that amazing to see the creation of the Georgia Guidestone with all those languages? And one of the things that was inscribed on the Guidestones were that the
Yeah.
population should be kept to a maximum of 500 million. Now, currently, there's almost 9 billion people on planet Earth. So many researchers believe, many scientists believe, that there's an ongoing program of extermination that is occurring on a worldwide scale that's not being reported to the United States people. And in addition to that, there are people who are trying to get the information out on what's going on in the other countries of the world where populations are protesting, but none of that is covered in our media cycle. So right now there is huge population uh, revolts, if you want to call it, revolts in Germany, in Italy, in the Netherlands, uh, in different countries all over the world. They want to change legislation. They want to know that they have the right as citizens to be able to at least try to influence the laws and the taxation that is being levied on them. Now, is there an alternative motive like depopulation? Well, perhaps, but there's also the follow the money thing. So who knows? I'm certainly
I don't
not.
know.
Yeah.
I know China there, right, was government wanted, I don't know if it's still a policy, but for a long time to just limit one child per family. Um, and of course, COVID came out of China. Excuse me. That, of course, is led to all kinds of speculations, conspiracy theories on was that an accident or was that something from the lab, you know, affect the population, which it certainly did. Uh, I don't know. I get frustrated with conspiracies because they're theories and we ultimately never really get to the bottom of a lot of them. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, Brent, that from my personal experience in making these films and interviewing all of these researchers and experiencers, that they certainly believe that what happened to them and what they discovered is true. And I've been convinced enough to put them in a movie, that what they're saying and reporting has a very good chance of being true. And it's things like chemtrails, it's things like what's in our water supply. I mean, the stuff, the chemicals that they put into our water supply, it derived from aluminum, and it's a byproduct of the creation of aluminum, and it's a deadly poison. Yet I know pilots that owned an airline that flew barrels of that stuff to facilities where it's job, like the city water department, to dump it into the water. And so the more I chase down conspiracies, I don't necessarily believe them off the start, but because I'm exposed to so many people that are reporting things, I have to kind of sort through the stuff. But some of them are amazing scientists that have the data, and it's been given to the United States government in the form where it should have been brought before the Congress, and it's never brought before the Congress. And there's so many levels above top secret. You know, one of the levels is cosmic top secret, and I know of people that had levels, 8 levels above cosmic top secret. So, you know, it's it's not it's not unusual to not be able to find out the truth, or for governments not to tell the people about it. And why are they doing it? Well, some people would say they don't want to scare the population, like approaching asteroids, you know, and those kind of things. But in my opinion, people should know what we're up against. And that's the reason that I've created what I call the Safe Space Project. And that's the mission I took on as a result of my briefing. And I've dedicated over 50 years of my life to it, and I will continue to do so until I hope that we can change what's coming down on the planet. And when I look at society today, I am convinced that we are heading towards a catastrophic situation that will definitely change the world we know in such a horrific way that if I can do anything about it, I certainly will.
Okay. And how about the people who claim to have had uh, alien abductions and felt they were mistreated?
Abductees? You're asking about what
Mhm.
about abductees?
Yeah,
I
what's your
pers
opinion on on that?
yeah, yeah, well, I personally know a lot of abductees, and I think that so many of the stories that you hear about people abducted are actually made up. They're fake. And they're fake for whatever reason the individual has. But there's also a few that are genuine. Like one of the ones I'm convinced is real is Travis Walton. I know Travis very well. I've followed his story for a long time. He's had dinner at my house with my family and I and his family. And he has gone through so much and he has endured such criticism and ridicule. But I believe that Travis's experience is genuine. I also know several other people that I won't name who have had experiences that I believe they had. Now, I haven't made it a study to study abductees, but I have made it a study to find out about government contracts, government signatures to treaties with aliens. And I know very well about some of the people that interacted with a base called Dulce, which is in New Mexico, and that the people that have disclosed information on Dulce and about the aliens that operate out of there and run human experimentation and run um, abductions, um, that these people have suffered dire consequences. I mean, one person, after he was there, he was taken there by the chief of police to the top of an overlooked mountain over Area 51. And I'll tell you, the the situation was that he encountered some US military devices and he picked one up, and immediately afterwards he became ill, was hospitalized, and was paralyzed in a hospital for 2 years without even being able to move his fingers. And since that time, he checked himself out of the hospital, has slowly managed to regain his abilities to use his hands and to talk. He had a trachomectomy. What do you call it? When they insert a
Well,
tube?
yeah, the trick.
Tracheotomy. Yeah. Anyway, he had one of
I just
those.
call it a trick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of his food and water were fed to him intravenously for 2 years, and he's recovered from that, and he has since uh, gone back to running a computer company which he owns, and in addition to that, he's writing books. And so I admire him greatly, and I'm currently doing a film on him. Yeah.
Now you said he's writing books, so can you tell us who it is, or
I'd really not disclose it until the film is completed because
okay?
anything can happen along the way. But what I can say is the first book he wrote that got him in trouble when he wrote it was UFO highways. And if anyone wants to do some work, they can find out the author of that. And
Okay.
I'm excited to be doing a film with him now.
Of course, there's some speculation in various cases that some of the uh, contacts and abductions and such were actually orchestrated by uh, military intel, psyops. Um, you
Yep.
there's manipulating that information for whatever reason. Um, I know there's so much of it that's circulating, and people probably just throw up their hands a lot of times and say, well, it just sounds like a lot of sci-fi, and I don't know what to do with it, you know.
Yeah. Well, um, yeah, there are a lot of people that talk about that, and they're called MyLabs, and
Yeah.
they, for one person that you may know, he's pretty well known because he's run a broadcast network on radio for years, is Joe Montando. And he had an experience on the beach in Florida where that kind of a situation occurred. And he's been pretty dedicated to exposing stuff over the years.
Now
He's
that's not the remote viewing guy, is it?
no. There's a
Okay.
lot of remote viewers. I personally um, had a friend by the name of Ingo Swan who was working with Hal Puthoff, and Hal Puthoff was a friend of mine. As a matter of fact, when I first came back, I started what I called the Safe Space team based on my mission orders. And Hal Puthoff and Ingo Swan were both, and Hal Puthoff was one of the foremost nuclear physicists in the world. And Ingo Swan was the best remote viewer that Harvard and the study there that they ran for years on this, he was the best one they ever had. And from their standpoint, it's absolutely genuine. And of course, all of that was being reported to the US government because it was funded by the US government. And that's no secret. Anyone that researches that can find out that Harvard was paid millions of dollars to conduct that research for the US government, probably the DOD, the Department of Defense.
Well, let's see. I know he worked at Stanford Research Institute out in California,
Yes.
and he worked and along with Russell Targ and others.
Yeah.
I found it interesting that Jacques Vallée was called in to interview some of the remote viewers uh, back then, that because of the fact that so many of them claimed to have had UFO experiences, like Ingo Swan and Uri Geller.
Yeah. Well, Ingo created a painting, and I stayed with him at his house in New York City overlooking Central Park. And he showed me a painting called An Aft Ship's View of the Constellation Sagittarius. And what it was you could see, if you were standing on the back of a large spacecraft looking out through the glass, if you would, whatever it is, plastic, whatever, lucite, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you could see the constellation Sagittarius. And was the most beautiful painting that I've ever seen of that kind of work. And for a long time before Ingo died, he had a website called Supermind. And all of his paintings and artwork, and a lot of them were based on extraterrestrials and UFOs and that kind of thing. He had them up there free to view. So I don't know if people know it, but he was also an interpreter at the UN. And he had quite a history himself, in addition to his remote viewing career.
Let me ask you this. Following your experience, did you, I know you evolved this mission in life. Did you find that your consciousness, you reported this orgasmic, euphoric sensation, tingling, and everything. After this happened, did you develop at a psychic level, as some people described, or?
That's a great question. And the only thing I could say that would relate to that is that I get bursts of insight, and I also have the ability, if I'm dealing with somebody that's an alien, to feel their aura, if you would, the energy that surrounds them. I hope. I hope I can feel it on all of them. But as far as developing my own, it's basically the images and the experience has stayed with me so vividly that I'm still engaged in forming up what I call the Safe Space Project. And if people is interested in that, they can just look up Robert D. Miles' Home of Safe Space, and I have a brand new website. I've just finished it today, and there's an email form on there that they can scroll down on. At the bottom of the page, there's a contact. They can key in who they are and what they're interested in, and send it to me, and it'll come to me as an email. I don't take phone calls unless I know the person. And in addition to that, I have to apologize because I have got a lot of people that have sent me friend requests, and I apologize, but I've been so busy doing film. Actually, I'm in the process of two now at the same time. I've been very, very busy, and I love it. And I'm on the greatest adventure of my life. I plan on having the Safe Space team active again. We're going to do some exciting things in the not too distant future. And one of the things I've built 4 ocean-going vessels, Brent. Since I had that first one was number 1, the old Tanya rebuilt. The second one was the Fun and Games that we sailed to Hawaii, and the contact occurred. The third was called the King's X, and the fourth was called the Fairweather One. And I sent you a picture of it. Hopefully you can get it in there. And it was the
I'll
largest.
do my best.
Okay, it was the largest catamaran, private catamaran in the world at that time, and it had 2,000 square feet of interior and deck space, and its mast was 80 feet tall. It had accommodations for 20 people, and it was built by a group of people and designed by me, built on designs that I were given to create a seafaring vessel that could survive a cataclysmic event that affected the oceans of the world, and they all would. So anyway, that ship was constructed in Phoenix, Arizona. Took a little over a year to get it basically three hulls built and the cross arms that connect the hulls. And then it was trucked to Los Angeles on the largest flatbeds that existed at the time that could travel on the U.S. interstate. And we assembled it there and launched it there and then continued to finish it off. And I had a group of partners and went through a lot of, um, emotion, a lot of challenges. The biggest challenges that I had is that some of the people I selected uh, had a lifestyle of using drugs, and where they wanted to not do heroin, or I don't know if they did cocaine, but marijuana was a big thing back then, 82.
Mhm.
So I did not allow it on the boat. And I told them if they wanted to do it off the vessel, somewhere in private, that's their business, but better not be when they have to stand a watch on the boat, because we had all vessels that are out ocean going has a 24-hour watch. Anyway, so that led to a lot of dissension. Ultimately, I had to buy the partners out and ultimately took on the vessel myself with my wife at the time. And it was so challenging to keep up with a boat of that size that I just had to sell it. And sold it and ended up with another experience of creating a ranch, a farm. It's more property up near Shosholo, Arizona, and the largest
Okay, so you had a,
windmill in the
I'm sorry.
world, the largest windmill in the United States up there, uh, and that kind of thing. So
Oh, okay.
lots of things I've done. I've traveled. I really
Yeah,
like Nicaragua and Honduras. I love the people, and that's one thing I found out, Brent. People may hate Americans, but they really don't hate you. They just hate American policies. And the funny thing is that everywhere I've gone, I've met wonderful people. And yes, bad things are done in those countries, but they're not done by the good people, the
right.
ordinary people. They're done
Yeah,
by the criminals.
yeah. You hear a lot of people who decide to ride or bike across another country or hike, and they describe the people come up to them and help them out, and are very, very kind. And it's not, you know, once you get all the politics and the governments aside, and you're just dealing with the people, it's a different reality. Uh,
Yeah.
but
And America has so many enemies. And unfortunately, when I was down in Honduras and Nicaragua, America's enemy was Cuba. And that was too bad because they loved the Cubans because the Americans.
Oops. Oh yeah, man.
Did you knock that over, or did some entity come in and knock it over?
No, uh, I've got this on a little table, and I bumped it with my foot. I can explain that one.
Okay.
But
Any
anyway,
any Anyway, I apologize for looking at you on the screen over here instead of right at the webcam.
oh
Anyway,
no, that's
so
all right.
so
I need to correct that.
yeah, so anyway, they loved the Cubans because the Cubans came in and dredged the harbors. They built schools. They built highways, and
Hmm.
there's so many wonderful people if we could just forget uh, boundaries, and of course, there's something to be said about individual states. There's something to be said about individual countries. I'm not judging that at all, but I just know that we need to all be friends and we need to treat each other with respect. And ultimately, if we could, to live under the principles of love your brother and that kind of thing. Because there's no question that I've seen that if we don't change our way, we will suffer the consequence.
By the way, when you were in that craft or that circular room and you were seeing these things, was it like a hologram or was it like on a screen? And did they communicate?
Yeah, it was like holographic. It wasn't a screen, but the images were there. And of course, the sound was in my mind. I mean, they don't use speakers. They're so
So,
far advanced. Yeah.
so there was telepathy involved here, mind to mind or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And they, what they have produced on, it's like Jupiter. We're being told by NASA that Jupiter is a dead planet. You couldn't live there. The atmosphere is poisonous. Well, we've been told so much that's a lie that all I can say is that maybe it was in another dimension because interdimensionality is absolutely possible. And so if a person wants to say in this dimension, meaning the one uh, we happen to be in right now, uh, that's possible. But I know in the dimension I was in, it was magnificent. The energy and the sky and the people were just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and you were in Hawaii one moment, and then aboard the stateroom of your boat, and next you're at LaGuardia, taking
Yeah,
off in a spaceship. Yeah, that's
right.
pretty. And yet it all seemed very physical too. I mean, it wasn't like an astral projection, or,
No,
but I mean,
no. And
uh,
and when I came down that conveyor belt, I looked back at the craft I was in, and it was a circular saucer with a little dome on the top, like you see so many pictures of. Only it was about twice the size of a 747. Was the only way I could reference it.
oh
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it was
oh,
it was big. It was big, but it wasn't huge. Now, since that time, and some of the pictures people will see on my website uh, shows a starship called the Titha, Titha, and that's a Federation class Corvette cruiser over 5,000 feet long, made of solid gold exterior, and it's positioned on the backside of Jupiter. And I have seen it personally, and there's a whole story that goes with my book Safe Space, but I've got some pictures on my website of it, and it's beautiful. And around it is this circular ring, which I call a token ring, but some other people may call a portal. And those are the ones that are big enough to bring those huge craft through, or a planet, or it can be as small enough just to take a person, or whatever. So
hmm,
they're
okay.
yeah, they're called
But you hadn't been.
token rings. And I'll show you a medallion I wear which has that I don't know if people can see this, but it's that's a
A little bit
starship.
higher.
Okay,
Yeah. All right,
that's a
there we go.
okay. That's a starship Titha, and that's a token ring around it, and that's made from gold I mined in the river in California with suction dredges. I'm a gold miner too, Brent.
Hmm, okay. All right. Well, yeah, this is quite an interesting story, and with many moving parts. And I get last bit here, everything's been pretty well unglitched, which is really good. It's frustrating sometimes when you're dealing with this kind of technology. But even though there were glitches in most instances where it happened, there would
Yeah,
be a delay, and then it would pick up, and I could tell what we were talking about, as will the listeners,
yeah.
viewers. But anyway, I guess we've been about an hour and a half, so
Wow.
I know I know it goes
That,
fast, doesn't it?
yeah.
But appreciate you, letting me interview you and going through all of this. Are there any final comments or things right now that you would like to, you know, uh, mention, or um,
Yeah,
do
sure.
we need to do
Let me,
another interview sometime?
yeah, let me give everybody my email address.
All righty.
It's R like Robert, D like Douglas, M like Miles at the word safe space. SAFESPACE, the word project, PROJECT.com.
Right.
And people want to send me an email and tell me about something or ask me about something, I'll try to get to it.
Okay.
And yeah, and then um, if you if you wish, you can check out my new website, which is called Time Stream Pictures or Robert D. Miles Home Safe Space. If you Google that, I think it'll come up. It did earlier today.
All right.
But there's a lot of pictures on that website that people can play around with. Yeah. And then on the bottom, there's a form they can send me an email. And
Okay.
so
Well,
I really thank you. I really thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. And I look forward to that magazine, which will be online, right?
right. Yeah. At apmagazine.info. It'll come out on the 1st of May. And then at the end of May, there'll be another one on the 1st of June that'll come out. But each issue will be archived, and you can go to the top of the menu page and find a place to link up there. So, and when I present the bio and the magazine, I'll also include your email address too,
Okay,
and
great.
whatever other information that we can present as well as like pictures of the various boats that you were just talking about. That'll mean more once it's actually on the page.
Yeah. Let me comment for a second on the Safe Space project.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, there's going to be a new safe space project within the next short time and that's explained on the website. There's a section there called Safe Space Project. And basically, what I've always found uh, is that you have to qualify people. And by qualifying them, like at one time when we built that big ship Fairweather, which had accommodations for 20, I took those people, I leased a Morgan 41 sailboat and had 11 people aboard when there were only accommodations for 6. which meant a lot of people had to sleep on deck. And of course, when you have watches, it's called hot bunks, right? If you ever been in the Navy, you know about hot bunking. One person gets out and the next people gets in and they use sleeping bags or whatever. And we would go to Catalina from Newport Beach, California, and we'd be there about a week. And during that time, we would practice sailing, we'd practice skin diving. I'd teach people how to dive with the aqualung. And, we'd get beautiful lobsters and fish and have a great time, sail around Catalina, see the
Hmm.
whales and the porpoises. So there's going to be another safe space project, and there'll be a qualifying period. There's also going to be, hopefully, some classes, which we'll do online. I have a great friend up in Alaska who lives on a boat on an island in southeast Alaska. And he's a qualified captain. He actually was licensed for all waters, any tonnage, which means he could have run a cruise ship. And I think he's going to do an online kind of basic course on sea, on what it's like to live on sea. And I'll probably do some kind of a podcast on lifestyle liveaboards. I mean, what's it like to own a boat and live aboard? Because it's a big adjustment.
I imagine.
Yeah,
I was,
like,
I was gonna say
yeah.
I was in the Navy and 2 years on a destroyer escort. It's it's another
Yeah,
world.
yeah. Well, for one thing, you don't need a car when you live aboard a boat if you plan to go somewhere. You can't take your car with you.
No, no.
So, yeah, it all depends on the size of the boat. And the bigger it gets, the harder it is because you got to have crew. And that's the next thing. But anyway, that's just stuff about ocean going, which I love. Yeah.
All righty. Well, all right then. Well, thank you very much, Robert. Enjoyed chatting with you and going through all of this journey that you've been on, all the details and the experiences you've had. And it's a lot to process. Some people are going to throw up their arms, say it's all pure science fiction, but you got to keep your mind open to all of this information that's coming at us in this day and time, and try to interpret it the best we can, and you know, leave no stone unturned. So,
Yeah.
so thank
Well,
you.
it's really challenging in the world today. It's there's so much criminality and there's the economics are such that for most of us people, we are challenged to do anything except try to earn a living and pay the taxes. So, um,
Yeah, it's very challenging.
yeah.
It is.
Well, thank
So,
you, Brent. It's been a real pleasure,
well,
and
same here, Robert.
I've really enjoyed this.
All right. Well, take care, and let's stay in touch and see what comes along next. And if you can, send me any links that you want to include in the bio, that would be great. We'll
I'll,
build it up to a real good
okay,
bio.
I'll do that. Yeah, for sure.
All right. All right, then we'll take care and tell Leslie I said hi. And anyway, take care and on to
Yeah,
the next.
yeah. Well, Leslie is a co-author of a book we wrote,
Hmm.
and it's about what we call lycandroids, which most people refer to as dogmen or
Hmm.
wolfmen, which have become a very popular subject. But when we wrote it, there were very few people that had experienced the phenomena or were interested. But Leslie had been researching it.
Yeah, because yeah, because that came out in 2012. Yeah.
Yeah, and she had been researching this for years. and she had been the director of MUFON for the state of Tennessee, and she's very experienced with cattle mutilation and that kind of thing. But when this phenomena, she started interviewing people that had had encounters, deadly encounters with these dogmen or wolfmen. She wanted to write a book on it, and I said okay. And she had the research, and she had some knowledge, and I'm a little more of the creative side of things, so I kind of help put it in story form. And so it's a fictional story, but in the back of the book are some case histories of real people that had it. And in addition to that, at that time, we wanted to form an expedition to go out and see if we could find one to photograph it. But since that time, we've met people like Jim Groves and Bart Nunley and some other people that are out in the land between the lakes, which is where most of these horrific incidents occurred that Leslie researched. So the expeditions are being done by some of the groups, and it's just amazing what's happening to some of these people. So I encourage people, if they're interested in that topic, to check out those groups.
Okay, you said the expeditions and you mentioned the groups, but it glitched on us. Can you mention again the
It's the expedition
groups?
idea is in the book, yeah, but we're not trying to form up an expedition now. Yeah,
All righty. All right. Well,
yeah,
very interesting. All
yeah.
righty. Well, all right then. We'll take care and we'll stay in touch. And again, appreciate your time. And I'll get this on YouTube. If not tonight, then tomorrow. But
Wow,
anyway,
you're fast. You're fast.
it doesn't take too long. It doesn't to download it.
Okay,
So
okay,
anyway,
great.
I'll send you the link as soon as I
Okay,
get it
if
in there.
all right, if you can pause the record if you want. Thank you, Brent. Yeah,
All
and
right.
just
Thank you.
is it paused?
Um,